I'm John Miller, and I'm here with Ryndon Ricks today, and excited to kind of start our entrepreneur series. Last week, of course, we talked with our friends over at Tax Help Software, and Ryndon, I met you a few months ago, actually,
not
right?
long ago.
I think through some friends, and I was really interested in your place, your studio. I actually watched the show on YouTube how you built this facility with the foam blocks. I don't know what you call them.
Yeah.
But
ICF.
ICF, yeah, thanks. How'd you kind of get started as an entrepreneur? What was kind of the motivating factor for what you did?
Yeah, I guess I've kind of always been, like what kids do, like shoveling sidewalks for money. And ever since I can remember, just being a young kid, we'd do one big thing we did was we'd do this spook alley. I grew up out here in Newdale, Idaho.
Oh, nice.
So we did this spook alley when we were just young, 11, 12 years old, and we'd charge admission and set up the whole thing. And
cool.
And then from there, just doing all kinds of things. Like sell fireworks.
Did you do well with the spook alley? I've heard those businesses sometimes can explode into something
well, this
big.
is just me and my friends, just doing it, and we just
doing it for the neighborhood.
Yeah, we'd make a couple $100, and we thought that was
pretty good for
fun.
a kid, though.
Yeah, we'd sell snow cones and just all kinds of little things like that. And then and then as I kind of grew up, my business ventures sort of took off from there. I was a realtor for a while, so I'd gotten involved in real estate and did a lot of. I did some fix and flips and some kind of made some money in real estate doing that.
Do you still do any real estate or?
I'm not licensed anymore, but I do some personal just real estate investing. I do.
So how would you describe your business today? What is the areas that you primarily are focused on?
What I do right now is I do YouTube videos, mostly education based. So I'll teach people how to use software as one of my big channels.
Yeah,
I do
I've seen that.
Software education. Then I have some videos teaching people how to do like common household repairs and how to use different tools. So I really like the education space.
I probably need that a lot. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The education space is, I kind of like that as opposed to more of the entertainment space on YouTube, which can be a lot more competitive. So I've kind of found a good niche, I think, in the education space, and have a couple channels that are income producing.
I know in marketing, I talk a lot with my businesses and the clients I work with about building the audience. I mean, how did you initially build your audience? What was kind of the process and mindset you went through to attract the right kind of a viewer or a follower?
Yeah, that's a good question. And unfortunately, I'm probably not going to have the best answer for most people. What I did was I chose areas that didn't have, no one else was, I wasn't competing with anyone. Cool. So I'd choose software that didn't have any tutorials at all, and I would just make tutorials for that software. And so if someone searched that software on YouTube or on Google, then I would be the one that came up. And so I didn't necessarily target people, and there are ways you can target online and get a certain audience. I just went after a product that had no one was doing it, and so I kind of inserted myself. This was 2009 when I first started, and so it was a lot easier to get into YouTube then as well.
How fast was it building an audience in an area that wasn't, like give me an example of an early software that you, I know you like to focus on open source or freeware.
Yeah, one of the early ones I did was called Inkscape. It's it's a graphic design software. It's similar to some of the Adobe products.
Like Adobe Photoshop or something like
that.
Yep.
And it's grown a lot too, this software, and now it's just as capable as the Adobe counterpart.
Wow.
And a lot of people are using it. But back in the day, there just wasn't tutorials for it, and so I would teach people how to use that, and I was kind of the go-to place on YouTube to learn that software.
Now, did you do anything to kind of promote the videos in the beginning to help you build that audience, or did it just sort of grow by
I really did
osmosis? And
what I did is I'd put videos out, and I'd kind of try to put keywords in the actual title of the video. That's all I did. I didn't do. Some people promote on Facebook and promote on Instagram, but I didn't really do any of that. I just grew it organically from YouTube search.
And how quickly did your audience build in the software channel that you built?
It did maybe within the first 4 years, I had 10,000 subscribers.
Okay.
So fairly slow.
Yeah.
And then from there, maybe it took another couple of years to double. And now I'm to the point where I think I gained 100,000 in the last year or so.
That's amazing.
So it definitely grows exponentially. The more people that watch it, it attracts more people to watch, at least
No
on
question.
YouTube.
Yeah, and I think even organically, YouTube in a way sort of promotes you. I mean, I think there's even an area of optimizing for YouTube now, just like we used to optimize for Google and other things.
Yeah.
It's sort of happened in the YouTube space. They say that YouTube's either the largest or the second largest search engine now, even. And I think it's because of the expert, economy like what you've created with just software. It's people like you and me that have a unique niche, teach people, and it grows. Aside from the financial ramifications to your family, what would you say has been probably the greatest area of fulfillment from doing your YouTube channels?
Well, with this channel specifically, the software one, it's all free software. It's open source, which is the reason I started it in the first place. Not even really to make any money. It's just I'm a real advocate of open source software and free software.
Yeah.
So that's been very fulfilling. I get people from all over the world learning how to use the software from my videos, and I interact with them in the comments, and they're very grateful for the, to have the content freely available. I stand to make a decent amount of money monetizing these videos, and putting them on my website behind a paywall. It's just not something that, like you said, I wouldn't get that fulfillment, and that's kind of the main reason I do it, not necessarily as a means of income.
Did you ever think it'd become a business for you when you started this?
No, I didn't. Not when I started it, I didn't, and even YouTube in general, I didn't. It was probably maybe 5 years in that I started thinking that it could possibly be a business. And even still, this is a kind of a side. Like I said, I do the real estate, I do some cryptocurrency, and so this is not really the main income.
Yeah.
Even though it's kind of the main consumption of my time right now.
Does it? Okay.
Yeah.
How many videos would you say you're making on all your channels a week, a month, or a year?
I target one a day on my main channel.
Really?
And I haven't been doing that recently, but yeah, one a day is kind of my target that I've sustained for several years. And then the other ones I do, one a week or a couple a month.
Now, one a day,
ones.
what kind of video are you putting out? And how long is it going to take you to do something like that?
So that's usually a tutorial video that's just going to be, I try to keep them under 10 minutes long. So it's going to be maybe a 5 or 8 minute video teaching how to do a specific thing, like maybe create a passport photo. Do it yourself, create a passport photo using free software. And I go through the steps of how to do that.
Interesting. So to do a 10-minute video, how long might it take you to actually film it, edit it up, and then drop it up on YouTube?
That can take, sometimes best case scenario, I can do it in an hour, but it usually takes several hours, maybe 3 to 5 hours. Some of my, not my best videos, but some of my favorite videos I've spent weeks on.
No kidding.
Just weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, and then I finally get it done. But usually it's going to be a couple hours.
Now, I love the videos where you actually built this facility, with the ICF, but what would you say really grabs people's attention or creates a successful video aside from you wanting to do it? What have you noticed? Have you seen any trends?
Well, this might be just my intuition talking, but like in the education space on YouTube, I think it's really important just to jump in, get to the point, and be short and sweet with the video. A lot of people do some self-promotion at the beginning, or they try to have a very long intro and they talk about just stuff that doesn't need to be said.
Yeah.
And so I think just jumping right into it, that's the kind of videos I like to watch, and that's the kind of videos I like to make, are just videos that don't mess around, that they're not too broad, they're very specific and to the point.
Now, have you ever had anybody call you offline or reach out to you outside of the YouTube environment and say, hey, I want to hire you to do A, B, or C?
Yeah, I have. I get people out daily, mostly people wanting me to review their product, their software product.
Interesting.
And I never do take them up on that. But I have done some work. I've done some voiceover work for some companies in Europe.
Fascinating.
So they like presentation style, and so I'll give them a price, and then they'll give me a script, and I read the script for their software or for their. Yeah.
Do you run off script sometimes, or do you generally stay pretty close to what they're trying to do?
They kind of want me to be a little bit creative with it, so they'll give me an outline, and then they'll usually want me to be a little creative.
Your wife, I understand, has a channel too. Is that right?
Yeah, she has a gaming channel, so she does gaming, and she's good with that. It's every guy wants to be a gamer streamer, and there's not a lot of female streamers, gaming. Not a lot, not as many female gamers anyway. So I figured that'd be a good niche for her to get into, and I kind of helped her get into that, and she's really enjoying that. Being a gamer.
How is building her audience compared to what you've done? Obviously, she's in a more competitive space with a little bit of a unique niche.
Yeah, we're still kind of working on that, and her channel is still pretty young. We're doing some organic, and she's trying to utilize TikTok and Instagram and Facebook.
Interesting.
And just reaching that out. But a lot of that is all I know how to do is organic. I don't do the paid and sort of some of those other strategies.
Interesting. Great. Between the tools and the teaching of the people how to use the free software, what do you enjoy most?
Definitely the free software.
Really?
Yeah, that's what I do. I like learning the free software. I like helping people when they have a problem with it. I like being able to solve their problem and kind of take a complex task and simplify it a little bit and teach it.
How do you get your ideas for what to do?
A lot of it's just things that I do. So, because I'm always, the animation software is really popular, the video editing software, and those are things that I'm involved in. And so if I come up to a challenging project, I'll document the whole video and then teach people how to do it.
What do you think about in terms of your business as far as what's next? What do you want to do coming down the line here?
That's a good question. I really want to kind of in that same channel is help people get more freedom in their lives. So empower people. Yeah. Software is a good way to do that at scale. Yeah. But I've thought about maybe some hardware products to do that. I've thought about maybe like a little mini server on these little computers that you could send to maybe third world countries and have your Wikipedia and a collection of YouTube videos and just sort of some education material on there. So I've dabbled in developing something like that a little bit.
That's fascinating.
And just open source hardware is kind of something I'd like to get into, not just the software.
You also mentioned cryptocurrency, which is a big part of your business as well. Tell us a little bit about that, because that's an area I'm fascinated in and have dabbled a lot with. I'm sure you have, because you've been doing. How long? You told me earlier you've been.
Yeah, I got involved in the end of 2011, so pretty early on buying Bitcoin, and again, just because I like being in control of my software and control of everything, and I just saw this is some money that I can be in control of, and really, it's computerized money, and that's what attracted me to it. And so I bought some money, just a little bit, just to play with it, and of course it went up 30%, and I sold instantly. I bought it $12 Bitcoin at $12 and sold it at $19. I thought I'd made really good money, But so I kind of got in early and kind of got to see some development and some advances, and so and then I kind of took it a little more serious a couple of years down the road. I got involved with the launch of Ethereum. Started doing some Bitcoin mining and some Ethereum mining and a little bit of Bitcoin development and then some smart contract development. And so it's been great. I've met some really great people. I've traveled around the world to different conferences as a presenter and as an attendee, and just kind of had a good time. Really enjoy the cryptocurrency and the blockchain space.
Yeah, I'm a real fan of Ethereum. I actually like Dogecoin. I know you've got some other, but what are your favorite coins right now, and what's your favorite platforms? Obviously Ethereum, because you and I share interest in Ethereum.
I like Ethereum. They were a first mover. They're not they have definitely the most market share as far as a smart contract platform goes. So I like Ethereum, and I know Ethereum, and so I know how to deploy on the Ethereum blockchain. I like Bitcoin a lot too, again, because it's a first mover. It's got a lot of market share. It's kind of tried and true and tested and proven. And I also kind of like these privacy coins. So like Monero, Zcash. I like the coins that are making an effort to kind of obscure the route that the money has gone through. I think that's going to be kind of more important in the future, to have a little bit more financial privacy. And so I like those. I like what they're doing in that space, and I think it's definitely needed to have some more financial transparency than is currently offered in Bitcoin and Ethereum.
Yeah. You and I talked about that earlier, that privacy is going to be a driver of value. Why do you think that is? I mean, I think a lot of people perceive, well, I want to get away from taxes and I won't go there because I'm a tax guy. But why do you think the value is going to be driven by privacy, and what other factors do you think will drive value in some of these coins?
Well, as far as I actually don't really. I honestly do invest in coins that I believe in the technology, and so there's money to be made. You know, like you said, with like Dogecoin, where you buy it and you think it's going to go up, and then you sell it.
Right.
But I think kind of the scenario where the like Monero or a privacy coin goes up in value would be when regulators do crack down on a cryptocurrency and say, you know, you cannot hold Bitcoin, you cannot hold Ethereum.
Yeah.
And so if you're transacting and there's a record of all your transactions, that's risky. And so if you want to hold cryptocurrency against the law, you're going to do it with a privacy coin. And I see, you know, whether it's in the United States or in other countries, I think when a crackdown happens,
like what's happened in China, for example.
Well, that's like with mining, but I think they have a couple times they've put bans on.
It's not the first time.
Cryptocurrencies or on Bitcoin. So I think when those bans come into place, I think that drives the value and the use case for a privacy coin.
Interesting. Any other drivers of value besides privacy that you see happening?
Well, I think adoption. I think people are going to start getting into more of these smart contract applications like DeFi, maybe decentralized insurance. I think there's just some really. I think there's some pretty exciting things happening, and they are happening right now. But a lot of people aren't really utilizing them. You know, people aren't insuring their homes on the blockchain yet. But I think once they do, whatever platform that's happening on is going to increase in value.
Do you see development being a value driver for some of these coins? Like we talked about, Ethereum's doing a lot of development and promoting development among the community.
Yeah. I mean, anyone can start even the code for Ethereum is open source. So anyone can just take that, start their own Ethereum knockoff and call it something else. So kind of the big value for me is exactly that, the community around it. And Ethereum's one that has just excellent developers, a huge pool of developers that have been around for, almost a decade really, developing this. Whereas a new coin that gets launched today just doesn't have that. It takes some time to build up that community of people that understand how to deploy to that blockchain and make contacts with other people. So that's one thing I really see in the Bitcoin space and the Ethereum space is just that mature community.
You mentioned smart contracts and also, just what's happening with DeFi and insurance and other things. Any other areas where you see there's going to be some interesting area for development?
I really hope to see like more titles on the blockchain. So I'd love to have my vehicle title on the blockchain.
Wouldn't that be cool? Huh?
I think it'd be awesome. And houses, it'd be kind of cool if you could kind of day trade a house. Right now you got 60 days. You buy a house, and then 60 days later is the soonest you can sell the house if you're going through the traditional financial system. It's a very, very slow, kind of an expensive system, and I think removing some of that friction to where you can buy a house today, sell it tomorrow, and be fractional ownership of rental properties. I'm excited for all that. It's coming. It's not quite here yet, but it's definitely on the way, and I'd love to get involved.
Do you think there's opportunity for market manipulation right now in the crypto world, or what are you seeing?
Yeah, I do. We've seen kind of with with Elon Musk and different people, like just a tweet can really make the price go up and down. I think right now we're kind of seeing the stock market's kind of taken a dive, and that's has a direct correlation with cryptocurrency.
It is interesting to see the relationship between the stock market and the crypto world. That has been a fascinating
absolutely.
And so do you think regulators in all kinds of countries, like particularly the United States, are going to step in and try to regulate market manipulation in the crypto world, or do you think it's just too Wild West still?
It's definitely still Wild West. It's hard to do. You know, a lot of people, sometimes people say that when they find out I'm involved in cryptocurrency, and they're like, oh yeah, I heard the government's gonna stop that, you know, cancel transactions. It's just the way the technology is built. You really can't, unless you're really just going into people's homes and taking their hands off their computer. You can't stop it.
Right.
I mean, you can put regulation
portable
in place.
wallets now, and
it's a worldwide economy in cryptocurrency, and you just can't. I mean, the best you can do is regulate.
Yeah,
you really can't stop people from transacting on the blockchain.
What's driving people to move to the crypto world, do you think?
I think in recent years it's just been a way to make money. I think people, they hear about how someone made some money and made money quick, and it sounds easy, and so I think that's what's driving a lot of interest right now.
I also think acceptance is increasing, and that might be pulling people in, and I think concern over inflation in almost every national currency and the devaluation of national currencies is in a way driving people to crypto.
Yeah, I think you're right. I hope that's true. I'd like to think that people are getting in and kind of really evaluating, and that's why I tell people when they say, you know, what's the next best cryptocurrency to buy, I just tell people, do your research and buy what you're going to use. Do you see yourself using Ethereum somehow in the next 5 years? Maybe you want to put your car title on the Ethereum blockchain, you know. So, you know, if you see yourself doing that, I would invest in that platform, or maybe using Bitcoin to hedge against inflation. So if you can see a use case for yourself personally, that's a great way to invest, as opposed to just a catchy name and buying, and then you hope it goes up, or someone on YouTube told you it was going to go up. I mean, that's dangerous. And, you know, people, I've known people that lost a lot of money, people that made a lot of money. And so, yeah, that's why I tell people.
Interesting.
When you're making just a little bit of cryptocurrency, what would you tell people is a good point to start being concerned about what you put on your taxes? If you're doing $20 and you get a $5 promo from PayPal, is it $500, $1,000? When do you start really kind of thinking about tax strategy when it comes to cryptocurrency?
So I'm supposed to answer this question because of my license as a CPA, that really any income or you're supposed to start reporting. So if you're mining crypto, you know, that can be subject to self-employment taxes and income taxes and other things. It's interesting, though, some interesting ways of planning around taxes, though, for mining. For example, if I were mining, which I'm not, I would probably put it in a company that was owned, say, by a Roth IRA or even a regular IRA. And that company I would make a C corporation, because then it wouldn't be subject to self-employment taxes. It would be subject to income taxes inside the C corp, but then once you created the Ethereum or the Bitcoin or whatever it was, then I would move that over to another entity held by your Roth IRA and just hold it. And then the gains are going to be tax-free if it's a Roth IRA.
Oh, gotcha.
So it's a fascinating process. You can really do a lot with Roth IRAs that I don't think you can do just as an individual. So if you wanted to somehow escape tax, which, you know, I know there are a lot of people evading taxes with crypto. There's certainly no shortage of that. And that's why the IRS now asks on the 1040, you know, do you trade or have you traded during the year or mined crypto or any virtual currency. And they're trying to go after people. And they're doing some things that will, kind of auto-discover some people. So, for example, they've hit some big exchanges with subpoenas. And, and subpoenaed information on John Doe subpoenas to try and find people who are trading and then transferring into their exchanges crypto. And I think you'll see more and more tax oversight, not just by the United States, but I think every major country in the world is going to try and regulate from a tax perspective the income. But the way to minimize taxes in the United States is I think through the best planning idea is do it through a Roth IRA. One subsidiary, that Roth IRA is a C corporation. We call it a blocker C, subject to a low rate of tax right now. It's not subject to self-employment tax. Once you create that, distribute it out and drop it in another LLC owned by your Roth and use that as kind of your holding company so that when you someday sell it at a large capital gain, you escape the capital gains tax on it because you're in a Roth IRA. So it's pretty fascinating.
Interesting. And that'll work for short-term capital gains as well, long and short?
Any capital gains inside of that LLC, not the C Corp. So the C Corp, you're going to have to report at a market value on the, as you create your virtual currency, you'll have to report that income. But now you've created it. Now let's move it. And let's move it into an LLC. It's a passive entity, and you can trade. There's a great company out there, Directed IRA. I work with these guys a lot, and they have a crypto trading platform inside the Roth IRA. It's a beautiful product that they've created. So
cool, very cool. At what point should someone trading, $5,000 a year, does it make financial sense for them to set something up like that? Is it at what scale?
I even think starting small. Who would have thought $10 a Bitcoin in 2008 is worth about what today? I don't know. So I don't know. You're gonna spend some money every year. I don't remember what. If you just go to directedira.com today, I believe you're just to set up an account, it's probably on the neighborhood of somewhere between $300 and $600, depending on whether you have the virtual currency option or not. I do think it makes sense if you're going to be long-term, in a virtual currency, anything, that you ought to be doing it in a Roth IRA because then you can exclude the capital gains long-term. If you're doing short-term like swing trading, so buying on the dips and selling on the tops, it just depends. It's just like any other trading platform. You're going to have, exchange fees for trading on the platform, and they charge you a little bit extra. But at the end of the day, if I had 10 grand in virtual currency, I think I'd be on, in a Roth IRA, and I'd probably set the structure up. I think having a Roth IRA is a smart tax strategy anyways, whether you're in virtual currency or real estate or even traditional stocks and bonds. I think a Roth IRA is a terrific plan today, especially now that the Biden administration has indicated they're going to increase the tax rate on capital gains.
Oh, right.
And they're going to do it retroactively to April. So
gotcha.
We'll see if it passes through Congress in the way they're proposing, but I do think that this Roth IRA strategy is a good one.
Okay.
Yeah.
What kind of negatives or extra burden comes with having a Roth IRA?
Sure. Well, you can't do transactions with your family or with yourself because you're the beneficiary of this. Okay. And so, there are certain prohibited transactions. Like I can't go to my dad and say, hey, sell me your crypto. And, there's just a fair amount of prohibited. But if you're doing things all at arm's length and with non-related parties, you're probably going to be just fine. When you do want to make sure, I think, that you get a good trustee, a good custodian of the assets, which I believe Directed IRA is a great company. I've dealt with others out there. But I think having a good, solid company working with you is an important plan. And then I think if you do something unusual, like we'll have people buy rental properties through a self-directed IRA. That's part of why I like Directed IRA. Matt Sorensen over there is one of the leading attorneys in this industry. He knows the tax laws cold, and they're going to make sure it's done right so that what you don't want is you don't want some transaction creating a distribution event, because then all of a sudden now it's outside of the IRA, and that can cause all kinds of tax problems for you, particularly if it's a regular IRA, because you can have a huge taxable event in that year. So you're going to want to make sure that the guys looking over your shoulder are reputable, solid, and they keep you out of trouble. Again, you don't want a distribution.
Gotcha. Okay.
There are people in this country that have, better than $10 million a year, and even in the billions of dollars in a Roth IRA. And if you've got that much money in a Roth IRA, heck, I wouldn't want to be taxed unintentionally on $40,000 of a distribution, because I'm going to have to give over half of that to federal and state tax authorities, unless it's a Roth IRA. But on a regular IRA, you create a huge taxable event. You just don't want that happening to you.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, very good. Yeah, that actually answers a lot of my questions about short-term and long-term gains. I did have one other question about gifting. Mm-hmm. I think gifting cryptocurrency is similar to gifting other types of
any other asset. Yeah, it's similar.
And what are those amounts look like? It's like, I've heard $5,000 or something.
Oh no, I think this year it's and honestly I don't track it in my head. I always look it up, but I think this year for 2021 you can gift $14,000 to anyone, your kids, a family member, somebody you're not even related to, and you can split the gift with a spouse if you're married. So, if you think gifting is an option for you, I think it's a great plan to give $28,000 for a spouse and you to each one of your kids every year. And that goes gift and estate tax free. Now, if you gift more, which you can, as long as you don't have an estate that's, really, really large, and the estate tax exemption rises and falls literally almost every year, depending on the feelings in Congress and how much they want to tax estates. But as long as you don't have a huge amount in your estate, you can probably still gift it and have it somehow, go out gift tax free. But then if in later you suddenly increase the value of your estate, then it might become more of an event at the end of your life when they're taxing your estate. Of course, I tell people at the end of your life, what do you care what the estate pays, right? But that's the whole point of gifting, is you're moving it out of your estate in a really wise fashion and gifting it to your children. There are other or family members. There are other strategies for transferring assets to your family members too. For example, I think if you have a proprietorship, it's a great idea to have your kids work for you, and there are ways to even pay them a reasonable wage, which is high. For example, have them be your social media consultant and do things for you on Facebook and YouTube. Social media consultants tend to be a higher paid individual than the person that's just taking out your trash and vacuuming your carpet.
Right.
And as long as you're under the filing minimums, you don't have to pay withholding taxes or payroll taxes, and the kids can, use the money to buy their clothes, pay for their summer camps or whatever, or and here's a great plan, stick it in a Roth IRA, because if they're under the filing minimums, then they can stick all that money in a Roth IRA and start to see it grow into something that has, great value by the time they hit 18, 19, 20.
Sure.
So again, just another plug for a Roth IRA.
Yeah, excellent.
But I think gifting is a great strategy if you have assets, and it's just the fair market value on the date of the assets. So, but about $28,000 if you're a married couple and you split the gift, $14,000 if you're just doing it as an individual per year.
Okay.
And per donee too. So every child gets $28,000 from a married couple. And then you can add that $28,000 to your parents individually, each one.
That's quite a bit.
Exactly. So you can give away $1 million a year without any problems, as long as it's only $28,000 per recipient.
Oh. And is it safe to say that that's not going to look strange on if you're making $200,000 and you gift $150,000 away? I don't know.
Well, first of all, you won't have a gift tax return filing requirement as long as you're staying under the minimums. You're going to be just fine. So no, I don't think it looks weird at all. But
that's really cool.
An IRS employee might come in and argue with me, but there are a lot of things where people say, well, this will trigger an audit or that'll trigger an audit. Well, the fact of the matter is, if you're obeying
if
the laws, who cares
if you legitimate,
who cares if you have an audit?
Sure.
I've had audits that are open and shut in 2 or 3 weeks because there was no change, So I don't get bent out of shape over audits. Of course, I don't want my clients to have audits because it's just an administrative burden. But I wouldn't worry about audits as suddenly increasing tax as long as you're doing things right. And does it attract attention? I think if you're gifting lots of money and not, putting it on a gift tax return, so you're giving $100,000 to a kid and you're not filing a tax return, that might attract some attention. But if you're staying under the minimums, you should be just fine.
Yeah, interesting. Mm-hmm. Well, that's good. That provides some good clarity. Appreciate that.
Do your kids suddenly get a gift this year?
Well, and what do you do with that? I guess you create a bank account for the kids and their name and put the money in?
Yeah, you can even just create a wallet or an account on Coinbase or something and do it that way. But
and then as the
sure
guardian,
you complete the gift. Yeah,
you've got to spend. It's got to. I mean, it's their money, but you can pay for.
Yeah, they can. Yeah, it's their money, but they can pay for the things they want. Like in our family, we buy their food and their clothes and stuff. But if they want something, like a great mobile phone or an iPhone or something, well, that's on them, right? So
sure.
I think it's a great way to help kids start to learn to manage their money, because that's one thing I see a lot, is that a lot of kids have no clue how taxes work, how to manage money, how to spend things other than, think about this. When kids get money, a lot of times they go and they spend it on, 50-pound bag of Cheetos and candy.
Yeah.
And, all the things they want, but learning to spend it on things they need is also important, because then they understand the relative value of wants and needs. And I don't think we're educating our kids properly. Most of them think of money as, hey, I can go blow it on all the extras.
Sure, yeah.
And that's what we're conditioning kids to do. Once they hit 18, I can go blow it on all the extras when they're neglecting rent and food and other things.
Absolutely.
So. What would you say to, somebody that wants to go into business for themselves today? Having done this, of course, you were kind of an early adopter at entrepreneurship.
Kind of a funny thing, and maybe you ran up against this too sometimes. A lot of people, when they get kind of a business idea, they kind of get excited, and I see them, they just set up an LLC, or they kind of think like that's how you start a business, and there's really a lot more to it than that. I think just like a well thought out plan, kind of the more experience I've had with started and failed and incomplete businesses, the more I'm just a believer of having a good, solid business plan. Talking with people in successful businesses, doing lots of research, and just having a good, solid plan.
Yeah.
I think that's really the most important thing, because you can make money doing anything.
That's pretty true. I mean, it's a little harder to make it in some areas, but you got to figure out how to scale. I tell my kids it's a little hard to teach dance or art and make a lot of money unless you're super talented and know how to scale that across a lot of people.
I like to tell people, because especially when you're just coming out of high school or younger, if you're interested in cars, you might think, oh, I'm going to be an auto mechanic. But there's just so many things that you can do. You could be the engineer that designs the car. You might be involved in sales. So I like to tell people to figure out, what are you at heart? Are you an artist? Are you an engineer? Are you a manager? Because if you know kind of your core skill set, you can do any job. You can. There's room for management. There's room for design or artistic or, just labor. Maybe people you just like doing labor and building. I like building, working with my hands.
Yeah.
So knowing yourself, knowing what you are good at, and maybe what you're not as good at, is kind of almost more important than just having the, cars or like the thing that you like.
Yeah, I know of people that own businesses and they're terrible managers. In fact, they can't manage their finances, so they hire me. They can't. But the interesting thing I think is important, as you said, is once you know yourself, then you know how you have to support yourself as an entrepreneur, which is you've got to fill in the gaps. You've got to have people doing what you can't do.
Yeah.
And, it raises a great question. What do you think your biggest mistake was as an entrepreneur over all these years?
Well, I definitely know one mistake when I got involved in real estate. You know, I bought my first house when I was 18, just after I graduated high school.
That's pretty amazing, actually, even today.
Yeah, but it was, back then they're, $18,000, and the next one was $5,000.
When were you born? The 1800s?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, they're just like, they used to be cheaper, and they're still cheaper sometimes.
Yeah.
But for years, I thought I was this, real estate investor, when really what I was a handyman. I was making money off of painting and doing carpet and plumbing,
Interesting.
And when I really ran my numbers, I was like, if I had bought this property and hired someone to do the work, I'd be under. I'm paying myself $4 an hour to really just sweat, just work and work, and I always made money on the property, but I was kind of subsidizing it with my own free labor.
Yeah.
And so that kind of taught me early on to really, a good business is one that you can write on paper and hire the people to do it, and it will make money. It doesn't rely on the entrepreneur, at least long term, to be do all the heavy lifting.
Yeah, thanks. I like that. I actually tell people, until you've got kind of a marketing system going and people doing the work for you, you don't have a business. You're self-employed, but you're not a business owner.
Yeah.
And that's because you're doing all the $4 an hour work. You just didn't know it was $4 an hour when you got into it. Exactly. Any other mistakes you felt like you made and learned from?
Well, I did have I got into a partnership. A couple times I've had some informal partnerships, just business partners. And I'm a really easygoing guy, but it's, partnerships, when it comes to money and partners, you can really get yourself into trouble quick. And so fortunately, I haven't burned any bridges, and I'm on good terms with people I've worked with in the past. But that's one thing I would say, going into business, especially if I haven't done business with family, but I know people like to do business with family and finances with family. So that's one area of caution I would say is just kind of be very careful. And if you do go in with someone else to do a business, you just write everything out, make sure everyone's over-communicate in the early stages of it, is really kind of solves problems down the road. Yeah,
I've seen families destroyed over business and personal feelings. Even when they wrote everything out in the beginning, sometimes that can be a challenge to any relationship. There's no question. Okay, I got an interesting question for you. And I know we've been a little bit here, but if you were starting today, what business would you do today, right now? If you were 18 years old and starting all over again, what would you do, and why?
Oh, yeah, I don't know. I mean, knowing what I know, I'd kind of do this software thing. It's kind of an easy out because that's what I'm passionate about. So first and foremost, I'd do what I was passionate about. But if I wanted to make a ton of money, I'd try to be I try to arbitrage. Right now, you have the internet, and you've got this huge difference of labor, of job, of skills that can be done from anywhere in the world. So you hire someone in the U.S. to do a graphic design for you, and you pay several $100s.
Versus going to Fiverr and finding somebody abroad.
Other places. And so so if you can build a company where the work being done doesn't have to be done physically in person, you can really scale that quickly and make a lot of money by reaching out, paying people fair wages, or better than fair wages, in places around the world where it's cheaper than where the customers and clients live.
Have you ever tried doing that in your business? Hired people?
I haven't. I do hire. I do hire people on Fiverr, and I've got some people some repeat people that I do work with in the video editing and graphic space, and it works great.
What do you think the most compelling reason for anybody being an entrepreneur is today?
That's a good question. Probably just having that freedom, having that peace of mind. And a lot of people, I'm sure you know this, entrepreneurs, people doing business for themselves, they a lot of times do a lot more work for less money than they could get.
Why do I want to get a job when I can work twice as hard and make half the money as an entrepreneur, right?
Exactly. And so the reason is not necessarily always to make money, but it is that satisfaction and that control. Being in control is just good. In control of your life and in control of your work day. It's pretty valuable. I find it very satisfying, choosing when to work and when not to work. And And yeah, it's good that
I
way.
find too that freedom is really important to me now, where, you know, I've been married to my wife for a number of years now, and if I want to take off a day like I did just a week and a half ago, we took off a Friday and we ended up working all day on family projects, you know, around the house, cleaning the garage, organizing things, you know, fixing things. And by the time we were done, we didn't spend the day like we thought we would. So I decided to take Monday off too, and we went to Jackson and rode bikes and had a blast. But I think the freedom is what I enjoy more than anything. If I need to and if I want to, I can take off just about any day I want, you know. There might be some ramifications when I get back to having to do the work, you know, but for the most part, that freedom you can't pay for, you know.
That's really true.
Nobody can pay me enough money to be away from my wife. And I, you know, not like you, I actually did have a W-2 job for a long time. And but I always came back to my heart was, and I was like you, I raked leaves, I mowed lawns, I went door to door knocking, selling newspapers and yard cleanup and everything as a teenager. And I come back to that's what I enjoyed the most, was just working in a business that I owned and controlled. So, any other advice for entrepreneurs out there that you have that
I mean, I don't
you would
know.
do starting out?
I guess I'd just say you got to be persistent. Like, you're gonna fail. You know, and people say it all the time.
No question, you're gonna
learn
fail.
from your failures, but you can't be afraid of failing, and you can't be afraid of hard work. But if you can work hard and kind of pick yourself up when you fail, you're gonna succeed. It's just a matter of time. You gotta keep at it. So
Yeah.
it's not for the faint of heart. You can get lucky and sometimes start a business really easy and get lucky, but I'd plan on it being hard and just kind of an adventure. But
Yeah.
I say go for it. If you're thinking about doing a business, if everyone has an idea of something they've been wanting to do, you know, save up some money, get yourself a nice cushion, and then go out and try it and try to make it work.
Yeah, it's easier today, I think, than it was when I started. You know, I mean, you can kind of do a side gig here and there and see how it goes, but there is no substitute. Eventually, you got to jump in with both feet. You got to do it. You got to fail. You got to have months where you got to draw a little money out of savings, because that teaches you too. I found that when I had to draw money out, that motivated me like nothing else, because I knew there was a limited supply in the bank and I had to make bank. So I think your advice is spot on. You got to overcome your fears. You got to just make it happen, and eventually you got to jump in, and you will fail. There is no question. Well, thanks, Ryndon. It's been great to
thank
visit, and I've enjoyed our time together. So
Yeah, really
thanks a lot.
appreciate it. Take
All
care.
right.